Okay, sorry for this. There was a problem of encoding apparently, so um, this problem is apparently solved. I don't know if you're back yet. Yeah, some people are coming back. Hi again. Okay, so let's start again. Um, what we were saying is that there is a type of press which is called the tabloid press, the popular press, that decided to go into full support for Margaret Thatcher. Okay, that decided to go full support for Margaret Thatcher. And there was another type of press, which is something we call quality press. And quality press is more embodied by newspapers like, for example, the Daily Telegraph. And I'm sure you can see the difference between the Sun and the Daily Telegraph. Just look, firstly, look at the cover page. Look at the cover page. The cover page shows, firstly, much fewer pictures. Like pictures take a much smaller room on the cover page. Secondly, you can see that the titles are much more descriptive. They're not like slogans or catchy phrases, but Britain ready for massive naval riposte to down coup in islands. Falklands seized by Argentine. Marines captured. Members of Parliament will meet today. The quality press is a press which is not about catchy sentences and sensationalist approaches, but more about the facts. So the Daily Telegraph was one of them. Another one is the Times. And the Times is a conservative newspaper. I'm just looking for the Times. Here we go. Right, that's the cover page of the Times. At the beginning of the crisis, you see, very austere. It's not very funny, right? Fleet assembles for Falkland actions. Galtieri was the leader of the Argentinian junta, pledges no disruption. And as you can see, a lot of text, right? It's all about giving information, providing information. So during the crisis, you would have two types of newspapers covering the war. One would be the tabloids like the Sun or the Mirror or the Daily Mail, which were more looking for a sensationalist approach. The aim, of course, for them was to sell as many issues as possible. Whereas you had quality papers, so the Time was one of them. Another one was the Guardian. The Guardian, as the Time is more conservative. Okay, the Guardian is left wing. It was created firstly as the Manchester Guardian, so it was created in the 19th century, and it's generally pro-Labour. Okay, sorry, I'm just showing you this. And, right, as you can see, here again, I'm sorry with all this. Good. Look at the title. Task Force Death as Destroyer and Sea Harrier are lost. HMS Sheffield and Harrier destroyed. Very descriptive. Both sides, that's very important, both sides study peace proposals. They were not covering the war from a British perspective only, but they were willing to give not too biased approach, proposing both the British version of the facts and the Argentinian version of the facts. So you can say it's a bit more neutral or less biased than the tabloids. Okay? I give you one last example. Many newspapers in the UK have a Sunday version. They have a Sunday issue. The Sunday Time, the Observer, which is a Sunday newspaper, and so on. And these Sunday newspapers are very popular because, of course, they're generally much thicker. You have a lot of supplementary newspapers in it, like the entertainment supplement and the family supplement, etc. So it's very popular in the UK, and it was very popular in the 1980s to have these Sunday newspapers being read. Okay? And here again, you can see that it's descriptive, but as it's more read by families, you also have a lot of references that everybody can understand. And if you look at this, you can see the Blitz on the Falklands. And I'm sure you understand what it refers to. The Blitz was the German attacks over the UK during World War II. So that's the moment when the Churchillian myth I have mentioned was revived. From the very beginning, The Sun, which was the most popular newspaper and the most popular tabloid, decided to support Margaret Thatcher. They were pro-Thatcher all the way, and let me give you two examples. That's one of the most famous newspapers covers during the Falkland War. It happened when the British Navy attacked, sorry, I'm just trying to show you another document. So that's it. Not this one, actually. I don't need this one. I'm sorry, I'm losing all my documents because they're not a good format. Here we go. I hope at the end of the lockdown I'll be able to use this correctly and make sure that I have all the documents needed. Sorry. Here we go. Let's go. Right. Okay. If you look at this map, you can see that on the 2nd of May, it's on the map on the left-hand side. On the 2nd of May, there was a navy battle between the Argentinian Navy and the British one. And a cruiser that belonged to the Argentinian army called the Belgrano was sunk by the British fleet. And 368 Argentinian soldiers died. It was by far the largest killing during the war. More than half of the Argentinian casualties in the war happened on that day. In one day, 368 Argentinian soldiers died. Okay? This is how the Sun covered this incident. Gotcha. As you know, gotcha is slang for I got you. And that's something you find, for example, in the comics when you read like Spider-Man or Superman and you've got the superhero hitting the bad guy in the face, or that the bad guy is being arrested and it's like, gotcha. It's something like kids could say in a schoolyard. It's not exactly the type of title you would expect in a democracy on the very day 368 men had died. And if you look at the title, it goes even beyond. Our lads sink gunboat and whole cruiser. Our lads, our boys. Not UK soldiers, not the British Army, like with a distance. No, our lads, we are with you. Okay? You know what a lad is? A lad is a word for all the working class people, especially in the north of England. So it's a friendly word. It's a friendly word. It's a friendly name for the guys, the guy you hang around with. Okay, your posse if you want. But that's what our lads are. It's the bunch of people you like to hang around with. You're like family with them. So clearly, as you can see, the way of covering the war by the Sun was far from being neutral and the type of journalistic objectivity you would require from journalists. They were clearly taking sides. I give you another example, which I think goes even beyond this. Okay. Right. Here we are. Let's get rid of this one too. Perfect. Good. This is another page. It's from the end of April, right? By the Sun. As you can see, Battle for the Island was like a stamp put on every day's issue. So it means that the war by the Sun was covered like a series. Each day a new episode. The Battle for the Islands, episode 1, episode 2, like cliffhangers, what's going to happen next time, and so on. It really was dealt with as if the Falkland War was a series, right? And the title here is Stick It Up Your Junta. And that's a reference to a popular expression, which is stick it up your jumper. And that means, it's a way of saying, okay, make do with it, right? Stick it up your jumper. And stick it up your junta is a pun, a bad pun, on the Argentinian junta. And look at the rest of the title. Maggie know to deal. Not Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. Maggie. So with this familiar naming, right, the Sun was creating a proximity between the British readers and the Prime Minister, Maggie. Okay? Whatever you think of the French press, okay, I'm not saying all newspapers are good in France. Can you just imagine one newspaper? I'm not talking about, a humoristic approach. I'm not talking about Yann Barthès or... No, I'm talking about like Le Figaro, Le Monde, Libération, L'Humanité, Le Parisien, La République du Centre, whatever. Making a title which would go like Manu déconfine. Édouard parle à l'Assemblée. No, you wouldn't have this. You wouldn't have this in a title. Maybe with a humoristic approach or a satirical approach, maybe you would get something like this. But not on the cover page, not in the title. Having Manu parle à la télé ce soir to deal with Président Macron. You would have Emmanuel Macron, le président. Okay? That's something that the tabloids were doing a lot. And so, of course, it creates a feeling of proximity. You see? Right. Actually, this title, that's the last thing I wanted to tell you. This title has a meaning. During the war, a journalist that worked for the Sun was reporting from a boat. He was reporting from a boat, a British Navy boat, and this boat was about to launch a rocket, a missile, onto the Argentinian army, and the journalist grabbed a marker, a pen marker, and he wrote this sentence on the missile. Of course, it's purely symbolic, right? Because no one is going to be able to read this. I mean, when you get a missile in your head, you're not reading what's written on the missile. But the very fact that a journalist was able to write a slogan to mock the Argentinian soldiers that would receive the rocket and die from it and make a pun out of it shows you that it was not journalism in its most objective coverage. Okay? The Sun was fully supporting, 100% supporting the war, and they were not supporting the war for a question of fairness, for a question of justice. They were supporting the war because they were following a jingoistic and nationalist approach. Some other newspapers, as I've told you, were covering this more neutrally. I'll just give you one example. Okay? Sorry. That's the way the Sun covered the Belgrano being destroyed. Okay? Gotcha, all that, sing the gunboat and so on, blah, blah, blah. I also, something I've not shown you yet is this. The Navy had the RGs on their knees last night after a devastating double punch. Firstly, they use up the RGs to talk about the Argentinian army, which is a derogatory moniker. Like, the RGs is not the Argentinians, right? It's derogatory. Secondly, they had the RGs on their knees after a devastating double punch, as if the war was a boxing game. As if you had two boxers on the ring, and you've got a double punch, and one of the two are on their knees. But even if a boxing game is violent, most of the time people, after having been on their knees, they just, recover. In that case, they were not on their knees. 368 of these soldiers had died. So, to put it differently, the Falkland War in the UK was a moment when the nationalist feeling was strong in the UK. But maybe there was a reason for this. The last war the UK had waged outside with so much public coverage was the Suez Crisis. And if you remember, they had been humiliated because they had been forced to leave Egypt under the pressure of the USA and the USSR and the international pressure. And so clearly in the Falkland Wars there was something like, cleaning the humiliation from this defeat. On the contrary, some of the press remained very, very descriptive. This is how The Guardian covered the same event. This is how the Guardian covered the sinking of the Belgrano. Sorry, here we go. Right. I'm sorry, once again, I don't know why it's not appearing. I think it's very slow. The software is so slow today. Right. So I'm sorry I can't add it, and that's a problem because I really need it. It's coming. Very good. Here we are. Here we are. Here we are. Right. When you go to the Guardian website, they've got a huge set of archives available. So it's very easy to find back and read the articles from this period on the Guardian website. Look at this. On the very day the Sun was saying, "Gotcha, we got you on your knees," and so on, the Guardian said, Argentine ship General Belgrano torpedoed by British submarine. Enemy vessels was in 200-mile exclusion zones, pose significant threat to British task force, says Ministries of Defence. The Guardian did not take what the government was saying for granted. They were not saying, hey, our lads are the best. They say, according to the Ministry of Defence, this is how it happened. Unconfirmed report that many have been sunk. Okay? So, it's very descriptive, very factual, and it did not encourage specifically a jingoistic approach. Problem, the sun was read, well, problem, it's not a problem in itself, but the sun was bought by 3 million people. The Guardian was sold to 400,000 readers. To say it differently, the Sun was selling 7 times as many issues as the Guardian. Okay? So it means that the influence of the Sun was very strong during the war. It was pro-Thatcher. It was pro-war, clearly. It was jingoistic. And it clearly turned the opinion into this jingoistic feeling. Okay? Right? So the coverage was clearly not neutral. I can't resist showing you 2 or 3 more extracts from the Sun. One being this document about boycotting Argentinian goods. You will see how it shows the type of commitments that the Sun could have. I'm looking for this. It's called Boycott Their Beef. That's it. Right. You may know this, but the Argentinian economy is based on exporting a lot, exporting minerals, but also exporting agriculture and especially meat. And so this is what you could find in the Sun. Like, since the government seems unable to bring about defeat through military means, the Sun suggests that we start a trade war today. So the Sun was calling for their readers. The Sun was calling for their readers to boycott the Argentinian goods. It was not a governmental decision. It's not the government saying we should stop buying goods from Argentina, right? It's more the Sun telling their readers, are you good British people? So you should boycott their belly beef, okay? Because look at the tin of belly beef, and if it comes from the home of the military junta, don't buy it. A boycott would wipe 1/3 of Argentina's corned beef supplies from supermarket shelves. Okay, and so as the UK was importing meat from Argentina, the Sun was calling for their readers to boycott it. Clearly not something you would neither expect from a neutral source of information. So what I find interesting in this is that you can see that you have the 2 sides of what journalism can be. Either it's factual reports of the facts, and this is what the Times would do, this is what the Guardian would do, this is what the Observer would do, on the one hand. Or journalism is about having an editorial approach, okay, which is taking sides. And that's what the Sun would do, this is what the Daily Mail would do. Just to bring a bit of nuance, I want to show you one last document, which is there. Okay, right. Okay, so it's the Mail on Sunday, another Sunday paper. Okay, and actually, the Daily Mail didn't have a Sunday issue before the war. Okay? And the reason they created one, it's because, as you can see, it's the 2nd of May. And it was under plan for the Daily Mail to have their Sunday version published. But why did they do that during the Falkland War? Because the Falkland War was a moment when the British population was reading a lot of newspapers. And so clearly it was commercially good to have a war and start a new newspaper. And look at that's the first issue of the Mail on Sunday. Mission accomplished. First attack rogues the Galtieri junta. Mission accomplished. That's something a military would say. These are military words. And so you see that the Falkland War was also a moment where reporters and journalists were using the opportunity created by the war to sell more newspapers. I mean, it was a commercial opportunity for them, right? Good. How far did Margaret Thatcher benefit from this? She benefited from this because she was shown as a war leader. Okay? She was not only called Maggie, but she also was depicted like this. Maggie saying, "We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets, we shall fight in the hills, we shall never surrender." I'm sure all of you have recognized the most famous words by I'm going to answer your question as immediately about the Guardian and the Times, and I will explain you how you can tell the difference with the tabloids immediately, because your question is absolutely excellent, but I will explain you why. I'm just concluding on this cartoon, and then I'm back to your question. These are the most famous words delivered by Winston Churchill in May 1940, after the British government had rejected approaches made by the government of Nazi Germany to sign an armistice between the UK and Germany, and Churchill had decided that the UK would fight whatever, and that the UK would resist Nazism whatever it would take. And this is the speech which has remained as the moment when Churchill decided to go into a total war against Nazism. Okay, we shall never surrender. And so, of course, you can see Margaret Thatcher smoking the same cigar as Winston Churchill, which is actually called a Churchill, because Churchill was smoking so many cigars that he left his name to this variety of very long cigar that generally takes 2 hours to smoke one of them. As you can see, she was a bit thin and a bit too slim in the very large outfit, which were made on the size, according to the size of Churchill's outfit. But that's clearly the moment when Margaret Thatcher was walking in the steps of Churchill. The last great prime minister to have won a war massively and to have gained major support and made a major consensus in the population for being the war leader. I give you another example of this, and I'm not forgetting you, Elsa, right? I swear I'm still thinking of you. I'm just looking for this. Oh, that's a perfect photo. Immediately after the Falklands were liberated, Margaret Thatcher decided to have a trip there. No British Prime Minister had ever gone to the Falkland for a very simple reason, that why would a Prime Minister go to a fisherman island, okay, for any reason? So when the Falklands were liberated by the British Army, she went there. And as you can see, she was the only female person among a rank of British officers and soldiers. And she looks like very at ease with this situation. So she reinvented herself. She reinvented herself as a war leader. Okay. And she also, so there were several moments. I'm just looking for another one. I think it's this one. She was also filmed and shot several times in a military position, right? And as sorry, I'm just preparing this for you. She would entertain, she would keep, she would maintain this military attitude. Here we go. Sorry for this. Here we are. This is Margaret Thatcher on the top of a tank, right? And you can see the Union Jack, the British flag. And she was wearing these glasses, to protect from the wind and so on. So, a woman at the top of a tank. Right. I am the leader of this country. During the war, during the conflict, the government tried to control as much information as they could from being spread to the British public. Why? It was easy to do, actually, because the Falklands were very far away. It was very hard to have TV coverage. So the only way for the journalists to go to the Falklands was actually to go using the military equipments, the boats, the vessels, the planes. So it was very easy for the military officers and the military censorship to control the type of information that was being passed to the journalist. And Margaret Thatcher certainly took advantage of this. She did not officially censor information, right? Actually, it was not the case, because the UK is very adamant about keeping its freedom of press. But clearly, it made it easier for the government to spread the news, to convey the message that someone strong was in charge, someone strong was taking the country to victory. So there was some opposition within the press, right? You had some moments in the press where Margaret Thatcher was criticized for maybe becoming too, maybe too aggressive and warlike. Okay? Eventually, it is clear that she benefited, Margaret Thatcher benefited from this moment, from the capacity she had to appear, whether it was true or not, but from the capacity she had to appear as a new Churchill, okay, and also she benefited from some of the press support. The reason why she went to have a photo taken, right, in the Falkland, is also because of this. Remember what I've shown you. That's one of the pictures I've shown you at the very beginning, right? This photo really shocked the UK. It's a photo which was shot at the very beginning of the war, where the Argentinian army had just conquered the Falkland. And clearly, Margaret Thatcher was supported by the population not because of the Falkland themselves, because most British people actually knew nothing on the Falkland Islands. But when this photo was released in the British press, it rang the bell of the humiliation of the Suez Crisis. It also revived the memories of World War II. We can't be defeated and humiliated like this. We were able to resist Hitler, and we would not be able to resist an Argentinian junta, really? And so that created a reflex of patriotism, a reflex of nationalism in the UK, including in some left-wing electorate, right? The working class in England is highly patriotic. Contrarily to a Marxist working class that would certainly be more internationalist. In the UK, the Labour Party is a patriotic party. Okay, it's more a promoter of patriotic feelings than a communist party would be. So it means that Margaret Thatcher, she was able to get the support of some of the left-wing electorate by being a war leader. You had a question, Elsa, which is a very good one. If it's only about the facts, how can you tell the difference between a right-wing newspaper and a left-wing newspaper? It's because either in The Guardian or in The Times, the informational pages and the editorial pages are clearly separated. There are articles where you have the facts and the facts only, and then you've got the editorial reading of this, like, let's have a left-wing view on this subject, let's have a right, they don't say like this, you understand what I mean, but let's have the Times view on this matter, let's have the Guardian's view on this matter. And in this op-ed, in these editorial articles, you would have the left-wing or right-wing, the Labour or Conservative approach. But in the description of the facts, it would remain unbiased. Whereas in the tabloids, you can't tell the facts from the editorial approach. When you call the Argentinian armies the RGs, you're already analyzing the situation from a biased point of view. If I write an article tomorrow, and my article has les ricains ont vraiment élu un crétin, it's not about the facts. It's already taking sides. But I could also write an article saying l'électorat américain choisit de réélire Donald Trump. And then maybe 2 pages later, I will explain you that re-electing Donald Trump is a disaster or a catastrophe or whatever. You see? In the Sun, you wouldn't have the difference. The difference couldn't be told. Okay? So, The Guardian as left-wing, the Times as conservative, there is some editorial approach, but it's generally in a different place. There is a place where you see the facts, when you read the facts. An Argentinian cruiser, the De Belgrano, was sunk by the British Army according to the Ministry of Defense and so on. Okay? Yes, Sarah, but that wouldn't be the freedom of press. The freedom of press is not having one newspaper, you know. When you have only one newspaper, you can't have all the content being discussed as freely. So that's part of the free market and the free press. Okay? So now you have all the elements to understand why Margaret Thatcher was regained some popular support during the war. And that led, and that's going to be my conclusion for today, that led to the very first document I've shown you. That led to Margaret Thatcher being re-elected in 1983. In the UK, between 2 general elections, there is a maximum gap of 5 years. Okay? General elections have to be organized every 5 years maximum. But the Prime Minister can decide to organize general elections whenever they think it's necessary or profitable for them. So once the Falkland War was over in 1982 in June, and Margaret Thatcher's watched the surveys that proved that she now had the support of half the British population, she called for general elections. And as the Labour Party was totally non-organized and decided to counter-attack against Thatcher with a very, very, very left-wing manifesto. The manifesto that the Labour Party had in 1983 was almost Marxist. It definitely helped Margaret Thatcher from winning the election. Okay? And she started a second mandate. She would make 3 overall. And her second mandate was the moment when she decided to push further away her agenda and now confronts the enemy within the miners' trade unions, okay, and the Keynesian consensus. Okay? That's it for today. I think we'll meet next week. As you know, this week I'm busy doing recruitment for the OIB to keep on. I don't know what form will be in the OIB in the future, but it's still there, so we need to recruit new victims. So I will do that from tomorrow till Friday, so I won't be able to teach classes, distant classes, for the rest of the week. Okay, so let's see next Monday, same time, like 4:15. Maybe I'll get some news from Cambridge in between. We may hope, because we have no news from Cambridge so far. Okay? No questions? Thanks for being here. Take care of yourselves. See you soon, and enjoy this reprise and end of lockdown. Okay? Right. See you soon, people, and have fun as much as you can. Right? Bye-bye. See you.